What if the world you know today, the cities you live in, the laws you follow, even the language you speak was shaped by one small island on the edge of Europe? An island once seen as insignificant, that rose to command the oceans, redraw maps, and forge the modern world itself. This is not just the story of power and conquest. It is the story of ideas, of revolutions, of a people who built and sometimes broke the world in their image. Welcome to Echoes of Empire, where we bring the forgotten stories of Britain's past back to life. This is the tale of how Britain created the modern world. The 16th century. Europe is awakening. Empires rise and fall like tides, each one chasing gold, glory, and God. But Britain, cold, rain-soaked, distant, is not yet a name that commands fear. Then something changes. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 is more than a battle. It is a declaration, that a signal to the world that this island is no longer a bystander. From the winds of the English Channel to the shores of the Americas, Britain's sails catch the wind of destiny. Merchants, adventurers, pirates, they set out under the same flag, driven by greed, faith, and something far greater, ambition. London becomes a heart that beats with trade. From sugar to silk, tobacco to tea, ships return filled with the wealth of continents. But behind this glittering prosperity lies a shadow: enslavement, exploitation, colonial greed. For every port that thrived, another people were silenced. Britain's rise begins not with kindness, but with conquest. Fast forward to the 18th century. The world is changing: steam, iron, coal. The Industrial Revolution begins not in Paris or Rome, but in the smoky valleys of northern England. Factories rise like cathedrals. Iron rails carve across the land. A new age of invention transforms human life forever. James Watt's steam engine, Richard Arkwright's spinning frame, George Stephenson's locomotive. These are not just machines. They are symbols of human dominance over nature. Britain becomes the workshop of the world. From Manchester to Birmingham, from Glasgow to London, smoke and steel mark the dawn of modern civilization. For the first time in history, ordinary people can dream of wealth beyond imagination. But there's another side: children in factories, families in soot-filled air, lives crushed beneath the gears of progress. Still, this is the paradox that defines Britain: the power to build and the willingness to pay any price for it. The British Empire stretches across continents. The saying spreads, the sun never sets on the British Empire. And in many ways, it's true. Because Britain's shadow now touches every corner of the globe. The 18th and early 19th centuries, an era of revolution. Across the Atlantic, colonies rise and fight for independence. Britain loses America, yet learns to rule differently. From loss comes wisdom. The empire adapts not just through force, but through administration, diplomacy, and knowledge. The British learn the power of ideas. From Newton's laws to Adam Smith's economics, from Darwin's theory of evolution to the founding of parliamentary democracy, Britain begins to define the rules of modern thought. The Royal Society becomes a beacon of science. London transforms into a global hub of art, trade, and intellect. English becomes the language of law, science, and empire, spreading faster than any army ever could. But as reason rises, rebellion stirs. In India, resistance brews. In Africa, voices of freedom begin to whisper. And at home, the working class demands change: the right to vote, to live, to be seen. The empire that built the modern world is now building something else, its own reckoning. By the dawn of the 19th century, Britain stands unchallenged upon the waves. The Royal Navy, a force unmatched, rules the oceans like a god of iron and wind. From the Caribbean to the Cape, from Bombay to Sydney, British ships carry not only goods but ideas. They export railways, telegraphs, law, and the English tongue, and import cotton, tea, opium, and the sweat of foreign lands. Trade becomes empire, and empire becomes identity. The East India Company is not merely a business, it is a kingdom without a crown, ruling millions, minting coins, commanding armies. But beneath the polished surface of global trade lies a darker truth. Plantations built on slave labor. Territories carved by arrogance. Borders drawn by rulers who never saw the lands they divided. Yet, within that contradiction lies Britain's most defining feature: its belief in progress, even when progress comes at a cost. This is the age of innovation: the steamship, the telegraph, the printing press, inventions that shrink the world into a network of empire. For the first time in history, humanity can communicate across continents in moments. And Britain, that small island, is the center of it all. The 19th century is the era of curiosity. The British mind hungers for knowledge, to explore, to classify, to understand. Darwin sails aboard the Beagle and returns with a revelation that will shake the world: evolution by natural selection. Newton once defined the laws of motion. Darwin now defines the laws of life. In universities, laboratories, and libraries, Britain becomes a crucible of discovery. Electricity hums through new inventions. Medicine evolves beyond superstition, and the modern world begins to take shape. But with knowledge comes conflict. Science challenges scripture. The empire preaches civilization while practicing domination. The British believe they are the bearers of light, yet often their hands are stained with shadow. Still, the paradox deepens. While missionaries cross continents to spread faith, explorers and scholars bring back treasures, fossils, and secrets, turning museums into temples of empire. London streets glow under gaslight. The railways pulse like veins across the land. And in every colony, British influence becomes both admired and despised, a symbol of progress and of power. The reign of Queen Victoria marks Britain's golden age, at least on the surface. It is an age of invention, empire, and moral confidence. The Great Exhibition of 1851 in the Crystal Palace dazzles the world, a spectacle of machinery, art, and ambition. Britain presents itself not just as a nation, but as the architect of the future. London becomes the capital of the world. Steamships connect continents. Telegraph wires bind empires together in seconds. From Canada to Australia, India to Africa, the British flag waves over a quarter of the Earth's population, but behind the polished glass of progress are cracks: the Irish famine, the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the cries of workers in factories who live in poverty while the empire grows rich. Victorian Britain prides itself on morality, yet cannot see the hypocrisy within its own reflection. Still, there is grandeur here: railways that bind nations, legal systems that endure centuries, the spread of education, the rise of industry, the dream of global connection, for better or worse. The Victorian dream becomes humanity's blueprint for modern civilization. The 20th century dawns, and the empire stands at its zenith. British rule stretches from the jungles of Burma to the sands of Egypt. The pound sterling is the currency of global trade. The Union Jack flies over oceans, deserts, and mountains. But empires, like all things built by human hands, eventually face their reckoning. The First World War hits like a thunderclap. Millions march beneath the same flag, and millions never return. The myth of imperial invincibility dies in the mud of the Somme. After 1918, Britain emerges victorious, but weakened. The cost of triumph is staggering. The colonies begin to whisper of freedom. India dreams of independence. Ireland bleeds for sovereignty. The 1930s bring economic despair. Then another storm. World War II erupts, and Britain once again stands against tyranny. The bombs fall over London. The skies burn over Britain, yet the island endures. When victory finally comes in 1945, it is not triumph that defines the moment, it is exhaustion. The empire that once ruled the seas now struggles to feed its own people. The age of empire is ending, but the ideas it spread, democracy, law, science, language, those have already taken root across the world. In the years that follow, the empire dissolves colony by colony, nation by nation. India, Ghana, Kenya, Jamaica, the map of red fades, replaced by a world of flags that once lived under one crown. But the story does not end in loss. Because even as Britain's political empire crumbles, its cultural empire endures. English becomes the global language. The Westminster system becomes the foundation of modern governance. British inventions, from the steam engine to the World Wide Web, continue to shape humanity's destiny. Its literature, Shakespeare, Dickens, Orwell, still defines the human experience. Its music, from the Beatles to Adele, echoes through every generation. And its values, debate, law, education, remain pillars of global civilization. Yes, there were dark chapters: oppression, exploitation, injustice. But there were also moments of brilliance, discovery, and courage. Britain may have built its empire on power, but it built the modern world on ideas. Today, as nations rise and fall, the influence of that small island endures not as an empire of soldiers and ships, but as an empire of thought, creativity, and culture. So what does it mean to say Britain created the modern world? It means that every nation, in some way, walks through the footprints it left behind in science, in perhaps language, in law, in the very rhythm of daily life. But it also means something deeper, that history is never one-sided. Every empire that rises leaves behind both progress and pain. And the true legacy of Britain is this: the ability to evolve, to learn, to question, to turn the lessons of its past into the wisdom of its future. This was Echoes of Empire. Subscribe for more untold stories from the heart of Britain's history.